We are on Daf Samech Tet Amud Aleph, page 69a, and we are 5 lines down. And we're going to Bezrat Hashem to the Daf. We're lucky it's short Dafs these days, so. Okay. Bai Rava. Rava asks the question. New point. Says Rava, Yesh she'ela behekem or en she'ela behekem? Is there she'ela after you do hakama, or is there not she'ela after you do hakama? Can you ask on your hakama? Can you undo your hakama? Lady makes an oath, I'm never having meat again. Husband says, I'm with you on this. And my dear wife, I'm with you on this. And then after he thinks about it for a bit, and then he says, oh, she's not going to have meat, she's not going to make me meat. I don't know what he thinks, whatever. He says, no, I want to get rid of it. But after he did a hakama, can he get rid of it or not? So says the Gemara, Im timtza lomar, if you want to say yesh she'ela behekem, if you want to say that there is she'ela behekem, if you want to say that you can undo hakama, yesh she'ela behefer or en she'ela behefer. So can I undo? Can I question? Basically, undo a hafara or not undo a hafara? So now let's say again, she says, I don't want to eat meat ever again. And he says, I don't agree with that. Hafara Nedarim. And then a minute later he thinks, well, you know what? My dear wife, she's a new wife, whatever it is. And he says, okay, fine, I agree to your thing. Can he upkeep? Can he undo his hafara? If you're saying that you could undo a hakama, can you undo a hafara? So the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here. Damar Rav Yochanan says, Rav Yochanan, Nish'alin al ha'ikem ve'en nish'alin al ha'ifer. And that's it. That's, Rav Yochanan puts an end to this question. And he says, you can question your hakama, you can undo a hakama, ve'en nish'alin al ha'ifer, and you cannot undo a hafara. So it seems...
You don't need to.
What do you mean?
If you make an hafara, she has no obligation, no neder. And then if you guys change your mind, she makes a new neder, the same neder again, and so it's, so you don't need to.
Okay, but on that neder, let's say on that neder, we're saying, that's anything. She can make the neder again tomorrow or whatever. Yeah, you're right.
So that's really nothing.
Right. But on that neder, let's say he's, she does taking neders is it's not light to make a neder, right? We learned that already. It's not okay. Appropriate to light, so okay, on that neder. So Rav Yochanan says nishalin ha'ekem, you can undo a hakama, ve'nishalin ha'efer, and you cannot undo a efer. And the understanding is because once there's a hafara, it gets rid of the neder. So she said, I never want to eat meat again. He undoes the neder. That's it. The neder's gone. So you can't now say, okay, I want to undo my hafara. That's it. Everything's done. The story's over. He does hafara. That's it. Her neder's gone. But when he does a hakama, her neder's still standing. So she says, I never want to eat meat. He says, okay, I uphold your neder. I agree with you. My wife, I agree with you. I uphold your neder. So the neder's still there. So within 24 hours, if you want to now knock it out, you could do a hafara on it. It makes sense because there's something there to work with. Once you do a hafara on the neder, it's you undid her neder. That's it. Her neder's gone. There's nothing there anymore. Okay. Bai Rabba. Rabba asks a question. That's a little bit of an interesting one. Bai Rabba. Kiem lechi. He says basically it's kayam twice. It's kayam for you, it's kayam for you. So this neder's kayam, this neder's kayam. He says it twice. V'nish'al al hakama rishona. Mahu. And then he does a she'ela on the first hakama. So what the question is, will that second hakama stand? Or will that second hakama not stand? So when she says, I'm not eating meat anymore. He says, I'm doing a hakama to your neder, I'm doing a hakama to your neder. For some reason he said it twice. The second time he says it didn't do anything because the first time that gives a hakama, and the second time is, okay, it's nice, you strengthened your words, but you didn't really do anything halachically because you already did a hakama. But then, nish'al al hakama rishona. Then he says, that first hakama that I said, and I'm not, I'm undoing my hakama. So now, does the second hakama just fall into place, and therefore there's a second hakama over here? You have to get rid of that one also if you want to really get rid of this neder. Or because every time you have a mahu, you have to explain what's the two sides of the question. So over here, he says hakama twice, and then he says that first hakama that I said, I don't mean it. So he undoes that one. Does that mean now that the second one just slips into place, and now there's another hakama that to get rid of, or because the second hakama was really nothing, it just all you need is one hakama. The second hakama is a nice extra word, so then it's nothing over here. So when he says I'm getting rid of the hakama, he gets rid of the whole hakama. How do you look at it? So the Gemara says Tashma, Dama Rava, come in here. Says Rava, Im nish'al ala rishona, shniya chala alav. Rava says, without a machloket, if he does a she'elah on the first one, then if he does a she'elah on the first one, then the second one is chal. The second one works. The second one just slips into place, and it works. And the hakama, so there's a hakama there. Yeah. Let's see. Let's read the Ran Bai Rava, which is in the middle-sized lines towards the bottom, 10 lines up from the bottom of the page of the Rans. Bai Rava. Mi amrina, do we say, since at the moment that the second hakama came out of his mouth, it didn't do anything. So too, it always never does anything because it was just redundant. Or maybe you could say, even though at that moment that he said the second hakama, it didn't count for anything. That's because that at that moment, there was the first hakama in place. Because you didn't need the second one to work. But when you question and undo the first one, you find the second one there, and therefore it works. As we explained the case, that's the Ran says. So the next Ran. Okay. Okay, so we don't need to go to the next one. Fine. So that's this question. So therefore Rava answered that the second one does fall into place. It seems like he brings it from a proof from a different Gemara. Fine. Next question. 2 lines up from the bottom in the Gemara. Bai Rabba. Rabba asks a question. Kiyem lechi umufar lechi. He says an interesting thing. She says, I don't want to eat meat ever again. I don't want to, whatever neder is. He says, it's kayam and it's mufar. Velo techol hakama ela im ken chala hafara. And then he says like a stipulation. He says, a condition. Velo techol hakama ela im ken chala hafara. The hakama is not going to stand only if the hafara stands. So it's like, what's going on over here? He's like going back and forth. So he says, I want this neder to be kayam. I want this neder to be hafara, mufar. And I don't want the hakama to stand unless the hafara stands. So it sounds like he wants the hafara at the end. Why is he saying the hakama for? So the Gemara says, Mahu, what is the halacha? So the Ran explains what's going on over here. If you go in the Ran, 2 lines up from the bottom, L'Rabba Pshita, it's in the middle of the. So the first line is basically saying that I heard other Pshatim and I don't agree with it. This is what I think the Pshat is. L'Rabba Pshita le, the Hakama lo chayla, He says, according to Rabbah, it's pashut that hakama. If a guy talks like this for some reason, the hakama is not gonna. It's not gonna be hakama. Because either way you look at it, if the hafara stands, there's no hakama. קיים לכי שעה ומופר לכי שעה, אחד התערוויו או לא, שניהתם שנתן קיצור להקמה להפרה. Later on we're going to see in the next page, it's going to be basically for the next couple pages, a bunch of questions, these type of questions. If a guy said this, what's the halacha? If a guy said this, what's the halacha? So there he gives a time limit to his hakama and hafara. So there could be that maybe the hakama stands because there's a time limit to the hafara. So, but that's not going on over here. Over here is he says kind of both. So he says that, just looking at the run in the next page, he says that the guy knows that the hakama is not going to stand. Here, since he didn't give a time limit, it's obvious the hafara chayla, hakama lo chayla. If the hafara stands, the hakama doesn't stand, because this whole thing was a condition. If the hakama only stands if the hafara stands. V'yamra the hafara lo chayla. If you want to say the hafara doesn't count, mina the hakama nami lo chayla, then the hakama can't stand also. The atni, because he made it tanai. V'yamra the lot tichul hakama elayim kerchal hafara. That the hakama is only going to stand if the hafara stands. Therefore he says that this Rabbah, it's obvious the hakama does not work in this type of thing that this guy says. So that's not the question. Rabbah's question here is the mahu and the Gemara is like, what's the halacha? Is regarding the hafara. Does the hafara stand or not? Mi amrin and kevan de akadim ve'amar kiyem lechi ubatar achi amar mufar lechi. Since he started by saying hakama, then he said hafara. Mashma de atni de tichul hafara batar hakama velo tichul hafara elim kim kadma la hakama. So maybe he's saying that the hafara should not count because it goes together with the hakama. He said both at the end of the day. So if he said both, then it kind of like each one cancels each other out. He goes on basically to say this. This is, he sets up the question by first, like, what is this case? The guy says again, kiyam lechi mufar lechi, kayam and hafara, and I don't want the hakama to stand unless there's a hafara. So the hakama can never stand because he says a condition that the hafara must stand. So the Ran explains Rabbah's question over here is not about the hakama. The hakama we know does not stand. But does the hafara work or not? So on the one hand, you could say at the end of the day he said both, so maybe it should cancel each other out. On the other hand, it's at the end he said the hafara last, and he said that the hakama should not stand unless there's a hafara, and if the hafara should stand. So basically, this lady says, "I don't want to eat meat ever again." He says this type of lashon. So the question over here is there a hafara, or is there nothing? And if there's nothing, then her thing stands, then her neder stands. So it says the Gemara at the top of the page, Tashma, come in here. Miplukta de Rabbi Meir ve Rabbi Yossi. This is a machloket, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi. In such a case, Gemara says it's a machloket, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Where is this machloket? In the laws of Temura. Temura is halakha in the Torah that if you want to try switching a korban one for another, then really the kedusha goes on both. So I want to say, this animal that's designated for korban olah, I want it to go on to this animal. So now actually both become. So here in Masechet Temura, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi argue on the following case. The Tanan, second line down. Harezu Temurat olah, Temurat shlamim. So this guy, he has an animal, and he says, this animal in front of me is a temura for olah and a temura for shlamim. Now, you can't have two types of korbans plugged into one animal. It's two different types of korbans. Korban Olah is fully consumed on the Mizbeach. Shlamim is partly consumed on the Mizbeach, partly eaten by the Kohanim, partly eaten by the owners. So it's two different types of Korbanot. So how can you put into this animal and say, this animal is, imagine the guy, he owes a few Korbanot to the Bet HaMikdash. So this animal, this cow, it's going to be instead of my Olah and instead of my Shalamim that I owe, like both together. So what is it? Says the Gemara, Harezu Tumurat Olah Dira Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, this animal is just an Olah. That's what you said first, that's what it sticks. It's just an Olah. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Im lekach nitkaven mitchila, if that's what your intention was at the beginning, ho'il v'efshar likrot shnei shemot ke'echad, since you cannot call two names at once, devarav kayamin, his words stand. So again, Rav Yossi says like this: if that is what you intended at the beginning, which is both, if you really want both, you can't call both on one animal. But your words are still kayam because that was your intention. So what does this mean, dvar kamin? You can't have an animal two korbanot. So why? What does it mean? Your words stand. So the Ran explains that you have to take this animal, who now has olah and shlamim pegged to it, but it can't be offered as anything because it can't be offered as both. And basically, you take that animal, let it graze until it gets a mum, until it gets a blemish, and now that it gets a blemish, it can't be in a korban at all. Then you sell the animal in a state of a blemish, and with that money, you buy two korbanot, one of olah and one of shlamim. So that's how it would work, according to Yossi. So a guy that says, I want this to be olah and Tumura shlamim, if that's what you intended, said Rav Yossi, the mayor says it's the first thing that comes out of your mouth, olah. Yossi says, if you really want both, but you can't have both, but that's what you really intended, then okay, it's going to be both. But the way to do it is that let it graze until it gets a blemish, sell it, and buy with that money korban olah and a korban shlamim.
So how's he going to buy two?
For the price of one. Yeah, it's like I was about to say, maybe add a little bit more money, maybe get cheaper animals, smaller animals, yeah, from a cow to a goat. But you're right, what if he starts with a goat in the first place? Yeah, so it seems like he might have to add, but definitely from that money, he needs to contribute to the two. And says the Gemara, Va'afilu Rabbi Meir, and even Rabbi Meir. So now we're again trying to bring an answer to our question of the person that says two things, right? Hakama and hafara. And I don't want the hakama to stand unless the hafara stands. So now we say, okay, what's the answer to that? And we brought this machloket. So Rameir and Rav Yossi, you said two things. Rameir says go with the first one. Rav Yossi says if that was your intention, then both stand. And then the Gemara says va'afilu Rabbi Meir. Even Rabbi Meir, we could figure out something according to Rabbi Meir. Even Rabbi Meir, lo ka'amar, de lo amar lo tichul zu ela im ken chalazu, aval hacha de amar lo tichul hakama, ela im ken hachala hafara, Rameir nami modeh de hafara chala. Let's read that again and explain. Va'afilu Rabbi Meir, even Rabbi Meir, lo ka'amar, he didn't say, he only said his explanation, ela in a case, that's the Bach adds that, de lo amar, he did not say, lo tichul zu ela im ken chalazu. He did not say a condition. This one's going to work only if this one works. Meaning, in the case of the guy says olah and shlamim, it's actually different than our case. Our case was hakama hafara, basically, right? Hakama lechi hafara lechi, hakama hafara. But then he said a condition. He said, I don't want the hakama to stand unless the hafara stands. It's a condition. So you could see the hafara is more stronger than the hafara. The hafara is more stronger than the hakama. Over here, in the case of Ola and Shlamim, he did not make a condition. So says the Gemara that according to Rabbi Meir, if the guy did not make a condition in this case, he just said Ola and Shlamim. That was the end of his statement. So now, what if he did? What if he did do a condition? So that, to make it similar to our case. So let's see. Rabbi Meir lo kamar ela de lo amar lo tichuzu elim ken chadazu. The case was no condition. That this one's going to work only if this one works. But over here, the Amar lo tichul akama elim ken chala hafara. But in our case, where the guy says, I don't want the hakama to stand unless the hafara stands, Rabbi Meir nami modeh the hafara chala. Rabbi Meir would agree that the second thing that you said stands. Hafara works. Because in our case, you said two things. Hakama hafara. According to Rabbi Meir, hakama. That's the halacha, the first thing that comes out of your mouth. But over here, there's a different thing. There's a condition. The condition is, I don't want the hakama to stand unless the hafara stands. So Rabbi Meir would agree in our case that the hafara is the one that's the main thing. Because in the case of Ola Shlamim, he didn't say, I only want the Ola to stand if the Shlamim stands. He didn't say any condition. He just said Ola Shlamim. How do we look at it? Rabbi Meir says the first thing you said. So maybe here also the first thing you said, which is hakama, says the Gemara, no. Rabbi Meir would agree that it's hafara because you said a condition. So this Gemara was brought as a proof to our answer, to our question of hakama hafara. The hakama is not standing unless the hafara stands. What is it? And we saw in the Ran that explains that the question over here really is talking about the hafara. Hakama for sure doesn't stand. But is there a hafara or is there no hafara? So from Rabbi Meir, we see that he would agree that in such a case of a condition, we use the condition and the hafara stands. And so the Ran adds that, now what about according to Rav Yossi? In our case, what would Rav Yossi say about our case? So Rav Yossi would say if you intend for both, right? If you intend for both, like the case of the Ola and Shlamim, if you intend for both stand. So if you intend for both stands. So over here, if you intend for both is going to stand. So if you have hakama and hafara, then hafara wins, right? It both standing in Ola and Shlamim, okay, that could somehow work. Have an Ola, have a Shlamim. How does it work with one animal? Okay, you got to sell it. Then you can take from the money. Or you have a neder. I don't want to eat meat ever again. Hakama hafara. Well, what is it? So according to Yossi, both stand if that's your intention. Well, if both stand, then the hafara wins. Hafara gets rid of the neder. Hakama hafara. So then he would also agree that the hafara wins. So both Rav Yossi and Rav Meir would say hafara wins in that case. Okay, moving a little faster than I thought. Here we go. Next question. We are 6 lines up from the bottom. Ba'i Rabba. Rabba asks a question. Kiem umufar lechi bevat achat mahu. If he says it at one shot, seems like all he says was Kiem mufar lechi. It seems like the before cases, Kiem lechi, mufar lechi, wasn't that once. Here was at once. So why the guy said it is, sometimes I joke with my kids like, Abba, can I have a candy? I say, yes, no. But, there's like, it's no at the end, but so give it a little joke, and they say, come on, please, no, yes, no, right? In one shot. So maybe his daughter, it's not that the father could get for Nedarim for his daughter. So the daughter says, I never want to meet again. So he says, Kaya mufar. Right, so but halachically though, hey, there's a halachic question over here. What's going on? You say Kaya mufar, bevat achat. Does that work or not? So the Gemara says, Tashma, Dama Rabba, Kol davar she'eno beze achar ze, afil bevat achat eno. Anything that does not work one after another, this is a big rule. Anything that doesn't work one after another also does not work at the same time. So let's take a look at the run. So first of all, what is the question? We kind of said it fast, but what is the question? You said it together at once. What is it? So I think the question is, either does it cancel each other out because it's a kiyam mufar? I'm like, kiyam mufar, what is it? Or do you go with the second thing, or do you go with the first thing that you said? So one second. Yeah, the Ran says that you can't have both hakama mufar. But you said both. So maybe you want the first thing that came out of your mouth. Maybe you want the last thing that came out of your mouth. Maybe there's no order because you can't say two words at the same time. You can't say two words at the same time. One has to come first. So we don't. You said one first. Do we go with that one first? Do we go with the second one? Are they equal because you said it at the same time and you can't physically say them both at the exact same time? So the Gemara says whatever can't come one after another cannot work at the same time either. Let's look at the Ran, 4 lines up from the bottom. Upashtinan la midarabba de amar perka ish mekadesh. He says this is a quote of Rabbah. This line is in Kiddushin. This is like that was a little bet in the Mesorah Tashas points us to Masechah Kiddushin Daf Nun, and there he says as follows: Perek ha'ish mekadesh, gabe ha'mekadesh shte achayot ke'achat. If a man marries 2 sisters at once, you can't marry 2 sisters, but you marry 2 sisters at once. Dekevan delo matzi lekadshinu beze achar zeh. Since you can't marry them one after another, afilu bevat achat leka lechada minayu safek kiddushin klal. Even therefore, at the same time, it's not going to work. There's no safek even on at all. Hachanami. So before the hachanami. So therefore, like this: if I can't marry two sisters. So I want to marry bevat achat. Hare aten mekudashot li betabahot zu. Said at the same time. I have 2 hands. I put in 2 rings at the same time. That doesn't work because if I can't marry them one after another, I can't marry them at the same time either. That's his rule. So if I would do one after another, I marry girl 1, then I want to marry girl 2. It doesn't work to marry girl 2. So you're still married to girl 1 and a one after another, but you can't marry girl 2. So if you can't do that, then if I at the same time, then both of them don't work because I can't do one after another, so I can't do the same time. So he says hachanami sutu over here, back to the Ran, 3 lines from the bottom. Leka desfuke b'hakama u'hafara kalal. There's no question when the guy says hakama hafara at the same time. Umatzi batarachi le'afer u'lekuyim kedebai. And then he says, so because it's at the same time, now, like we said, you can't say things exactly at the same time. One has to come first. So he says, Hakama Farah. But in halacha, the same time is toch kere dibur. Within 3 seconds, the time it takes to say Shalom Alecha Rabbi Umori. So in that time, it's like considered the same time. So he says Hakama Farah. So therefore, things that can't happen one after another can't happen at the same time either. So therefore, like both can't stand. Hakama and Afara can't stand. They both can't work. Like Hakama, then I do Hafara knocks out the Hakama. So they both can't stand. So therefore, together it also doesn't work. And that's what the Ran answers. Umatzi batarachi lehafer ulekiyume kedebai. And therefore, after this, you could do Hafara or Hakama, like whatever you want to do. So he says what happens is it goes back to square one. She makes a neder. I don't want to eat meat ever again. He says hakam hafara. So what is it? Because it's at the same time, can I do this one after the other? I can't do this one after the other. Do hakama, then I do hafara. They both can't stand. Hafara is going to win, and they both can't, doesn't stand. So therefore, when I say it at the same time, it also doesn't stand, and it's like nothing. It's like I said nothing. Hakama hafara is like I said nothing, and therefore her neder still stands. And says the Ran, you can now choose to do hakama or hafara. Okay, let's just read the last question, but we'll review this again when we do the next shiur, which is going to be Bezrat Hashem next Thursday, so a little bit of a break. Bai Rabba asks, Kiyem lechi hayom, I'm mekayem the neder for you today. Ma, what is the halacha? Because it's like he makes a time limit to it. Mi amrinan keman da amar la mufar lechi machar. If the guy says, I want your neder to be kayam for today, does that mean as if he says it's going to be mufar tomorrow? Or dilma halo amarla? Or you could look at it like he didn't say it's going to be mufar. Do we do hafara nedarim through a intention or not? Through like he didn't. You have to say hafara. He didn't say hafara. He says it's kayam for one day. Does that mean tomorrow it's mufar? Or he didn't say hafara at the end of the day, so there's no hafara. Okay, we'll see that question. Bezrat Hashem next time. Chazaku Baruch. And next time, Daf 70. Bezrat Hashem.
As long as we have time, can I ask a question?
Thank you.
Yeah, you can ask a question. Okay.